Hello and welcome to episode 264 of the Mark and Me podcast. As always, I'm your host Mark. Now joining me on today's episode is the singer, guitarist and incredible songwriter Ruston Kelly. We get to sit down and talk all about the songwriter's career to date. We get to focus a lot on his brand new album The Weakness, which is out now and genuinely is absolutely superb. We get to talk about mental health, what it's like to go through the dark times, but also what it's like to be on the road to recovery. And overall, it's a fantastic interview that will be coming up in just a couple of minutes' time. But as always, I always like to use the intro of every episode just to quickly touch base and talk about my last episode. Thank you everyone that listened to Dan Masala from Story of the Year. A great interview, really positive, and I had some great feedback. So thank you to everyone that tuned in and listened. And just before we get to my interview today with Ruston Kelly, I just want to give a big shout out to the sponsor of the podcast, Richer Sounds. Without those guys, this podcast wouldn't be going. I don't have to put loads of adverts all the way through that aren't relevant. And a massive thanks to those guys. So if you're in the market for buying some new hi-fi or a TV, check out richersounds.com and you will not be let down. But today, it's all about Ruston Kelly. And honestly, this interview is so open, so honest, really raw, and one of my favourites, so let's get to it. Here's me and Ruston talking all things music. So Ruston, thank you for joining me today on the Mark and Me podcast.
Thanks for having me.
What I like to do, Ruston, for anyone that comes on the podcast and for the audience out there is take it right back to the very start. So talk to me about when you were a kid. What were those first albums that you remember maybe your parents played or you bought with your pocket money that you absolutely loved as a child?
I mean, I think the first record that I devoured was Jimi Hendrix Live at Woodstock. That was like the first one. But then also like my dad, we'd listen to a lot of Jackson Browne, like Jackson Browne's Before Every Man, Sky Blue and Black that Don Watts produced. He introduced me to Cream. I mean, like he introduced Cream and, like Spencer Davis Group and Jimi Hendrix, really, Clapton, like this is kind of this bedrock of, I know it's like rock music, but the way that, like, especially Jimmy, the way that he interpreted himself and his instrument, creating something, that stood maybe in a genre, but was also just like wildly himself. That's what attracted me the most to that. And I mean, it was pretty much, we had some J.D. Souther in there, the Eagles, just like good songwriter, Bonnie Raitt, Linda Ronstadt, that kind of stuff was in the house when I was growing up. That my dad listened to until I got about third grade, and then I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit and Nevermind because my brother was listening to that, and that kind of changed my life.
I was going to say, you've got some massive hard hitters there. Some of the names you're pulling out are just huge, and it's not like you could go and see them live. Stuff like Jimi Hendrix had already been and gone.
Right.
Nirvana were one of my first bands, actually. I remember even at late primary school, early secondary school, I remember having a pencil case and scratching in Nevermind and all the lyrics to stuff. And I never realized that those songs were quite simple, but so well done. And at a young age, you just love them. But, the fact that Polly was 4 chords, and I couldn't believe how simple it was, but it sounded so much bigger and better than just a simple acoustic guitar playing 4 chords.
Totally.
So when was it that it changed for you then? So you couldn't obviously go and see Nirvana or Jimi Hendrix. What was those first gigs you went to that you then experienced live music in front of you?
I mean, the first shows that I went to were when I was like a kid. Like we went and saw Jackson Browne.
Nice.
I think the first show that I ever went to, I was a baby. It was Beach Boys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But like the first concert that I went to on my own accord, like I was probably 14, and I went to go see Dave Matthews Band and Dashboard Confessional and Taking Back Sunday and, Fish, and like this kind of mixture of pop punk and emo with my jam band music really was my first like concert going experience.
I've had Dashboard Confessional on the episode, and what a lovely guy and what a songwriter, and again can incorporate a nice acoustic unplugged set that sounds beautiful but then can be in a punky scream along emo incredible room full of people literally playing an electric with a distortion pedal, and it sounds incredible. Like the
Yeah.
dynamics and the range of that songwriting is incredible.
Yeah. He's a great guy. We're friends now, which is really crazy, but he's a fantastic artist, songwriter in person.
So when was it that you kind of started to pick up a guitar yourself, or start songwriting, or start to think to yourself,
Mm.
I want to do it? Because there's one thing going to a gig and enjoying music, and I got to see Green Day when I was a kid, and even these heavier bands, but like it wasn't until I was like secondary school that I thought, I want to be in a band myself, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was these songs were so important to me, like hearing, you know, the entire Nevermind record, and also Dave Matthews with his acoustic playing. I just like I needed to like not just listen to these songs. I needed to like make them myself, if that makes sense. I wanted them to become, I wanted to step closer to them rather than it just be something that I was experiencing with my ears. I wanted to like embody them and be them and be able to carry them around with me anywhere I went. And the quickest way to do that was to learn how to actually play the songs and sing them myself. So it was really just to like satisfy a craving, that I had. And it was a very natural craving. It's been there since I can remember. And I mean, I was in a guitar store one time and was just completely like fucking bewildered. I was looking at all these guitars and I was like, oh my God, this is like, being in Superman's Fortress of Solitude and like all the different things to choose from. And this dude, I'll never forget, he had like long blonde hair and he knelt down and he had a Stratocaster and he just plugged into an amp and he was right behind me just trying a guitar out. And he started playing the chords It Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I was like, holy shit, I have to do that. I have to do that. So I set my mind pretty early on that I was going to recreate the feelings that I got from listening to music myself.
Was it difficult because the market is so flooded to try and get a name for yourself? Because it's difficult now because we're, 10, 15 years later when everything's streaming. But what moment did you realize that you might be able to actually make this like a full-time career?
It wasn't until I probably like my first tour, where it was, people were singing every word, to every song. It was in these really small clubs. And I'd get there and, I was like, I mean, maybe they know like one song or two and they knew every word. And I was like, oh, okay, that's something cool. But to be honest with you, I never really thought about it in terms of success or failure. I just like always knew that I was going to do it. And the win there was the fact that I was just doing something that was born in me to do it and kind of see down whatever road and whatever winding element of that road was going to occur, like didn't quite matter to me. Like I would do it if I was, busking on the street, which I have, and I would do it if I was working on a horse farm. I'd write the same songs, I'd play the same songs, and I guess it just led me into an area where you build a career and you can live off of the things that you write. Like I just never really thought about it, to be honest with you.
I suppose it's that kind of journey, isn't it? That, like you said, more people be coming to your shows, more people are singing along, but being
Yeah.
so heavily in the middle of it yourself, I suppose you weren't completely able to take a step back and be like, oh, look, everybody here right now is watching me, and, I can
Yeah.
start
Like
to
look
see
how
these
far I've
crowds.
come.
Yeah,
Yeah.
these crowds are getting bigger.
Right. No, I mean, I think there's a bit of a double-edged sword, to doing it and to be driven to do it, because I have to like take a step back sometimes and realize like actually, how far I've come just personally in my life and how much time, energy, emotions, and you know, self-realization and power that I've given to the art of creating music and expressing myself for a living. And it's I've devoted my life to it. I've done it since I was, I got in a van when I was 19 and started touring, and I've never looked back, and I've never thought about looking back. So I have to remind myself sometimes because, like, I get driven and I'm like, okay, well, now I want like this next step and I want this next step and I want this next step. And you can kind of like lose perspective at times owning a business and also being that business being something that's a reflection of your deepest secrets and the contents of your soul. So, yeah.
I suppose one question I ask this a lot to people, but did you have the full backing of your family? Because some parents are going to be like, look, son, you need to get a real proper job, or like, that's great to follow your dreams, but have something to fall back on. But you sound already, and I've only just met you, but you were only ever going to do that because you were so determined and that's all you wanted to do. So it didn't matter if you were playing in a street or playing in an arena, you were always going to do what you wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, it was like something was telling me to do it always. And my family was supportive. At first it was like they were maybe concerned about like how I would eat, and like how I would where I would live. And luckily my sister moved to Nashville because I was gonna go to New York and just kind of see what happens. Just I do feel like I've been able to land on my feet during rough times in my life. And I was just going to go there and see what's up. And my sister moved to Nashville and got an apartment, and I moved there because it was a free place to stay, And I went to college for one semester. I kind of played the game of being a regular human being, just to, you know, um, I don't know, just to do the thing. And I got in college and I started a jam band, and we played one gig, and there happened to be the son of the head of Paradigm there. He was one of five people. And the next week I was signed to, one of the largest booking agents in the world, and they put us on the road the following month. And I was 19, dropped out of college. My parents weren't too happy about that, but I told them that this is what I'm going to do, hell or high water, this will happen. So, I went and got busy doing it.
That's insane. Like, you must have been like, and I mean this with full respect, like, fucking hell, this is the best luck I could ever have had to have that person in the crowd that night at the right time, at the right place.
Yeah, dude. And it was a shit bar too. Like, it was in the middle of a cow field. Like, it was like in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Like, the odds of that happening are super slim.
That's awesome. You must have, like, you should have gone home and put the money on the lottery or something and be like, this is my day. Like, this is the day that everything's going to come true for me.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That's amazing. And I suppose then, did it just kind of snowball? Was it just a case that you were seeing these gigs getting bigger and more people coming along and more people wanting to hear your music and the download numbers are going up and the record sales are going up? Was it just happening at a rate that you probably couldn't even imagine?
No, it was actually a little bit of the opposite. You know, we got signed to this company, and then they put us out on the road with Humphreys McGee and OAR. Like, we were playing opening for people in arenas and stuff. And I, being an, it's kind of cliche to say, but like being an artist, at times you write from a very painful place in your life, like whether there's some crack that happened at some point, maybe in a past life that you're trying to reheal, or like maybe in this current situation in your genetics, like who knows. But writing from that perspective, you're definitely susceptible to wanting to numb that, you know? And we were on the road, and, it was my turn to drive a 24-hour shift to get to the next gig, open it for OAR in some arena. And I was really tired. And, one of the dudes we had with us was like, hey, like, if you're really tired, you can take this. And I was like, oh, what is it? He's like, it's not drugs. It's just, it's medicine. It will like keep you awake. And it was speed. And I took it, and I didn't know that like taking that pill would alter the next 10 years of my life very drastically. Where I would be like a full on junkie by, 23, and then have to like reclaim myself after the fact. There were many opportunities, all that to say, many opportunities that were wouldn't say squandered, but it wasn't the right time for me personally because I wasn't ready. Like if that had happened to me, if it had just kind of gone like that immediately, I probably would have died, or not been able to really handle um, what it takes to be an artist that cares about his work and his craft, his career, and his business, and his employees, and his touring company, all of that stuff, that I care deeply about now. And I'm starting to see that thriving. But there was this shadow period that I guess was necessary to my own journey. And so it wasn't until I really started to climb out of that hole that I started to see like tangible success in fans showing up and start selling out places and the rooms getting bigger and growing and all of that stuff like that.
So for that kind of period, does it just seem like a bit of a blur now? Because obviously all those times of the drugs and the rehab and trying to get out of it and get clean and not let them be part of you. Does it feel like a different life? Does it feel like you're a different person, if that makes sense? Do you feel like you're just looking back and like, fuck, did that happen?
Yeah, man, that's a really great question. For a long time, it did. To be honest with you, up until about a year or two ago, it felt I tried to distance myself from who that person was as far as identity goes. But, as I feel like a lot of us dealt with in the pandemic, there was this need for taking personal inventory. And a lot of our relationships either thrived or they completely fell apart. And senses of identity as well. I mean, never knew if like I was going to be able to tour again. And what does that mean if I wasn't a touring artist? And all of this. And so it made me get down to basics and made me get down to the roots of who I am as a person on this planet, not just as an artist. And it made me assimilate, the things that maybe I wanted to distance myself from, that to own them and know that they were a huge part of why I feel successful as a person, business aside. Just like I made it out of something where 99% of people don't. And that honestly, like, not to be cheesy or corny, but like that leads into like this record that I made, which is called The Weakness. It's this assimilation of being okay with all the things that have made you weak, because the irony is that if you get up each time that you fall and you name those things that make you weak and less than yourself, then you actually can become a lot stronger. And it took me a good chunk of my 20s to be okay with that, because I just wanted to distance myself from, I'm not that guy anymore. And I'm not, but I was. And so I have to carry that into who I am now.
Was there anything that you did majorly as a change mentally or in your life that stopped you going back into the roots of the person you were?
I mean, like what is it that I want to do? Like, what do I really want to do? What kind of person do I really want to be at the end of it all? Like, did I live, with honor? Did I give it everything that I had, my career, my relationship with my friends and my family, my relationship with myself? I was raised to be the best version of myself. That has been a very harsh critic in my mind at times, but I do want to be great. I want to be the best version of myself possible. And that's how I want to go out. I've always been that way, always worked as hard as I could. And for some reason I had that thorn, that would keep me from being fully realized. And that's what did it. That made me it's like, damn, like I could die, and like if I were to go back to that life, I think that I probably would. You see it all the time, but I just there's just way more that I have to do, before it's my time, in my opinion.
It's a funny one because, and I don't mean to get too heavy, but I'm not on the level of you, but I've been in a life with drugs. I've gone through a divorce only a couple of years ago, and I've come out stronger. And I was never proud of the person I was, and I felt like I was wearing a mask every day. I felt like I had to get up and put a mask on and be this person. And now coming out, I hurt people. I had some big mistakes in my life that I made, but because I've been there and made them, even though I was wearing a mask, even though I made the mistakes, I now appreciate everything that I took for granted a lot more. And it might just be the smallest little thing, but I'm remarried now. I've got a lovely home. I've got a couple of dogs, and just going for a walk with my dogs and holding my wife's hand means more to me than a line of cocaine and cheating on my ex-wife or having an affair or just being a complete dick. And I kind of
Yeah.
feel like I had to do that to then appreciate everything else. And that's not making an excuse because I was a bad person, but I won't do it again because now I know what makes me a good person.
No, dude, and that's all it is. I mean, that's so well put at the end of it all, like holding your wife's hand, walking down the street with your pups. I mean, that beats everything. You know what I mean? That just like really wins.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I'm looking for in my life. And I have that in certain areas. It's really the simplicity of the things that we value most, to not take them for granted, like you said. And now we know what the stakes are.
That's the biggest, most important thing I think you've said so far, because the stakes have never been so high. And now, even though it's such a simple life and such an easy life, I want everything to be minimalized. I don't want hundreds of friends that just now and then I speak to, and unless I call them, they won't call me. I don't want to be going to be seen at every party. I just want to do what I want to do that makes me happy with the people around me that make me happy, and it just be simple. And I've never taken the elements so seriously as I do now. Just sitting by the side of the sea and just watching the ocean is something more peaceful than any spliff or nights of drinking all night. And I'm like, this is here the whole time. This has been here my whole life. But now I think I've just grown up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Everyone has their own timeline as far as emotional growth goes, and you just nailed it. I mean, nothing really beats, like, I think Eminem said this actually. He said, he's like, yeah, man, like, I know it's corny as fuck, but like, you get sober and like you see a leaf fall from a tree and you're like, damn, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Like, I mean, that's the truth though.
It is.
And you don't have to get sober to do that. Like, but it's really just a complete mindset shift is really the most important thing.
Do you feel now that you're in a really good place because you've just got, obviously, the start of April, The Weakness coming out? I've listened to a couple of the tracks and
Yeah.
I hear a completely different sound and style to Shape and Destroy. I think it sounds to me, and I mean this with full respect, it's got more of an indie rock anthem kind of vein to it. I hear elements of stuff like Manchester Orchestra, even vocal lines of even Thrice, which I wouldn't have said 3 or 4 years ago about your music.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the challenge of an artist is to keep things interesting for yourself. Like, you know what I mean? You can't, like, I can't like make something that I've already made and recreate something that's this or that unless I want to. I feel like that's the beauty and the double-edged sword in that as well. Is you build a fan base and then you're like, okay, well, next record, and that like you have a sound that works, quote unquote, but that's like your goal-oriented career mind speaking for your artist self. And like, I'd rather do the thing my way and fail, than to do it another way and have success. Or like, what would be even worse is if you do it the same way that you've been doing it and it doesn't work out. Like, I mean, the point is that I wanted to just create from an honest place always. And kind of like Bruce Springsteen would say, an artist's job is to create a box to put themselves in that's theirs, and then they spend the rest of their career getting out of that box. I also am a huge fan of Justin Vernon. I mean, he came to be known as Bon Iver through this like very cool Bolt record. And then, no one would have thought 3 records from then, it would have just been like full on electronic music. And now you go to a show and he's like playing arenas and stuff. I love that trajectory. I'm into that because he said very early on, as he started making these records, I can kind of do whatever I want. And that's how I want to be, it's just to kind of make whatever record I want to.
I think it's challenging as well for you because you don't then just rest and play it safe. Like, you could do 20 albums that sound just you and acoustic and it's nice and it works, but you want to get a bit more involved. You want your live shows to be a bit more energetic. You want to test
Yep.
yourself. And, you know, some of my favorite bands are bands like Thrice, like Radiohead, Bon Iver. You know, they don't sound like they did on the third, fourth, fifth album. They just keep
Never.
evolving. And even Paramore, I've just bought their new album, and they don't sound like their old band. They've really stripped down. They sound more like Fleetwood Mac than they used to now. When they started out, they were like fucking Fall Out Boy, and it's
Now
like, it's
yeah.
unbelievable. Like, I absolutely love that. So if you're now experimenting in a bigger live show and those indie anthems and a bit more heavy guitar and stuff, that's going to keep you inspired and interested as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, man. If the artist lacks inspiration, so like, what's the fucking point? You know, because it's gonna. That is the point, is to continue, like, I guess it would be like kind of, the label or anyone else would maybe call it risk taking, but that keeps things interesting. Keeping yourself on your toes. That's just fun. Like, that's a fun game to play. You know.
It's good, and it makes it exciting. And I think people will never know what you're going to do next. And isn't that the best? If everyone's like, "Oh, I can't wait for the new album.
Yeah.
It's going to be exactly like his last one, but another 12 tracks." No one's ever going to know what
Right.
you're going to do next. You went from an album, got divorced, bringing out a new album. You're happy again now. You found love. You seem like in a much better place. So fuck me. What's the next album going to be? Is it going to be poppy? You're going to be singing and dancing on
Who
stage because you're
knows?
happy, or are you going to be aggressive because you're letting all that kind of, I suppose,
I
all
don't
the
know.
weaknesses out of your system?
Right. I don't know. I have no idea, but like, I can start to feel like it spinning a bit. Like, it usually happens once, like, I get close to releasing a record. I kind of have this vibe of, I can feel like a new project happening, and I don't know, man. I feel like I can kind of, this record is it's different and not too different, but then in some places it'll be a little polarizing with existing fans. But I think the point was to create a whole new group of fans to come in and have a bigger live show, and have more of an energy to things that I wanted to pull from a different place than I ever have before. So
I think what I've noticed as well, and I don't know if you even sit and read all your own Instagram comments and stuff, but people are getting really excited that the fact of, I've heard names like Elliott Smith circled around. I've seen people mention Manchester Orchestra, who we mentioned today, but they're unbelievable people to be compared to, and saying that, they hear this in your voice and they hear the style. And my God, it's an amazing place to be in when people are now discovering your work for the first time because of that, and then going back and finding that you've evolved from 10 years in the industry.
yeah, dude. No, that's like, that's the greatest thing. Like, I'm super proud of every record that I've made. It did the thing that I wanted it to do artistically. And this record's no different. And I just was like, man, like, if some people come in to it because they're like, oh, I'm a fan of, Manchester Orchestra, and I heard this song, it sounds kind of like that. It's really exciting. And they go back and listen to the other stuff, like, whoa, this is like very, like, these are his first two records and I love them, and they become special to them in that way. I mean, because that happened to me as a, music consumer. I just would, I think I got into Dave Matthews Band on their third record, and went back and discovered this and this and this. And I was like, holy shit, like, this is my favorite band now. Same with Nirvana. I mean, Bleach. I didn't even know anything about Bleach until I got into Nevermind. So sometimes I feel like records, and hopefully this one might be, but it brings more people in, and then they can go back and discover a back catalog, which is hopefully exciting for them.
With this new album, and as we sit here, the people won't have heard it, and maybe when this episode comes out, it'll just be out, so people are starting to listen. And
Yeah.
I suppose the narrative of the record is, it's a variety, isn't it, of weaknesses that you've dealt with and how you've come through them. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I kind of take from it so far. Do you wish more people in the world would acknowledge their weaknesses and kind of put their hands up to say, I want to try and change it, or I want to try and address it? Because I got very tired of wearing a mask every day and hiding my weaknesses. And it was only when I started telling people that I had them, everyone was turning around to me and saying, fucking hell, like, do you know how long I've waited for you to say that? Because me too. And
Right.
Christ,
Right.
like, you have no idea how much I want to tell everyone the same, because I just try and keep it to myself because I don't want people to see weakness as such failure. When I think weaknesses,
Right. Right.
I think a weakness can be the biggest, strongest point because you can learn from it. And that's what I did through divorce, through being in hospital, through being on morphine. Like, I've come out of it. So
Yeah.
it's not a weakness, it's a lesson.
Oh man, pain is the deepest teacher. That's for sure. Suffering is like definitely a prerequisite to a mature sense of joy. Kind of like we were saying earlier, when you know what stakes really are. I do, yeah. I wish that. Well, it's kind of like I feel maybe my job uh, is to be, one of the hopefully many people that ardently proclaim that expressing yourself, whether it's just like a drawing at home that you put on your fridge to smile at, or a song that you write, however you do it, that art can be a route to know yourself better. And weaknesses are, we live in a very success driven culture. Western culture is very success driven as far as, how monetarily are you successful and did your venture go well? And what they mean by that is like, did you become successful from the venture that you did? But I think like all of that's great, and yeah, we live in that society, and I'm down with that. I'm driven to be successful, but true success, I feel like, is when you can admit to yourself the things that have kept you from being your most thriving self. And we have a hard time doing that. It's almost taboo. And like you just said, like that conversation I've had with so many people, where it's like I say something like, I'm so glad that someone said it, because I've been doing this and this. So the more people that are willing to see weakness as a form of strength and acknowledging it, because when you name something, you can own it, and that's power. I feel like the more likely like that we can, create a culture of vulnerability. Doesn't mean that you become the things that you're weak about. It means that you're more readily available to find strength through coming out of them and through them.
That's
So yeah,
beautiful, man. Like, that's speaking my fucking brain for the last 10 years. I didn't realize today's
thanks.
interview would be a counseling session.
No, right? Same, dude.
But it's good. It's good. It's healthy, and this is what I like. I can
Yeah.
talk. I can talk. I had Brandon Boyd on here, and we talked about Incubus and how great they are. But we actually ended up talking about yoga and actually being a free spirit and being able to let go of the stress and
Mm.
the pain in life. And it was like, do you know what? This is more of an investment in the chat than you telling me why you wrote the song Morning
Yeah,
View. Do
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, we can sit here all day, know why you're a great singer and why you write songs, but I want to know what you're doing when you're not writing those songs.
Yeah, totally, totally.
So I take it at the moment, and I've looked. You've got some dates in June, but are you looking at trying to eventually cross the pond and come over here and play some shows? Or
Yeah.
I know the world's gone a bit crazy, and the cost of everything is making it so hard for artists. But is that something we can hopefully expect?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we're right now like we've announced the first. This is the first leg of the tour, and then doing some support dates at Noah. Um, it is definitely in the sights. I think it's just a matter of logistics at the moment, but it's less about is this going to happen, and it's more a question of when's the best time to do it. So yeah, you can't expect me to be popping over the pond soon.
I will come and buy you a Coke with, and we'll sit down and put the world to rights.
Fuck yeah, man.
How's it feel on the verge of an album coming out that you've probably sat on for quite a while? You've listened to the songs to death. You want to get out there and start incorporating them into your set list so people don't just expect the same songs each night. Does it feel
Right.
nervous? Do you feel kind of this big anticipation of I hope the people dig it and those songs eventually become the crowd favorites?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. There's definitely a you know uh, an element of like, well, I hope they like it, but you can't live and die by that. And it's really just because I've spent so much time on this record, so much time and energy, more than any other record. There's been more people involved with it, kind of for the first time, and I'm just I'm just ready for it to be out and to go out and get on stage. Like I said before, everything that I do is in business wise is in service of getting on stage. So that I can't. I mean, I'm about to hit the road in 2 weeks. So I'm at 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think everyone kind of got locked away for 2 years, and there was this fear for me that, I don't know, most jobs you could do from home. If you worked in an office, you bring your laptop home. If you're a doctor, you can do stuff on Zoom. But bands couldn't get out and play. Gigs couldn't happen. Festivals couldn't happen. And it feels like the best time right now because, well, my calendar is probably 10, 20 shows a month right now that I'm trying to go to and look at. And it feels like all those bands that have been locked away for 2 years have come back stronger, more of a passion behind them. They're not taking it for granted anymore. And I've seen this, bands that I could hardly ever see, like Tool and Foo Fighters, they're now touring every year. It's not like every 10 years or 5 years you've got to wait to see, these great bands like Smashing Pumpkins. They're playing all year round, and it feels like a really good, and I know we've come through some shit times, but it feels like a great time for bands because you're playing more than ever and the shows are bigger than ever, and I just don't know, it just feels like a really great time.
I could not agree with you more, man. It's time. It's time for us to have that ability to enjoy live music again, for sure.
What I do on this podcast, and it's my last question for you today, buddy, is I ask the guest that comes on the show to pick the final song that's played, and it can be any song by any band, by any artist in the whole world. But everyone has done it, and there's 250 episodes now, and there's Anthony Hopkins, Kevin Smith, Mads Mikkelsen, all these different people. But everyone has chosen a different song that means something to them. And I know as a musician and a songwriter, you'll struggle because there's probably hundreds of songs. But when I asked the question, what's the one that came before any other?
Everything in Its Right Place, Radiohead.
I fucking love that song. So when I met my wife, who I'm with now, Kid A was one of the albums that it sounds weird, but if we were cooking for each other, when you first start seeing each other and you go to each other's houses, we'd always put that album on all the way. And just those opening notes on that kind of keyboard, every time I hear that, it reminds me of the early days when we first met and how special it was. And one of my favorite films is Vanilla Sky by Cameron Crowe. And again, when Tom Cruise wakes up, you hear those notes. And I was lucky enough a couple of months ago to go and see The Smile, Tom York's new band. And nobody realized just how much talent that guy has, that's his side project, not even Radiohead. But what a fucking album Kid A is.
I know. It's my favorite.
What's the reason that song came before any other?
I don't know. I love its title. I love its intent. And it's just kind of, every time I put it on, I truly do feel like it's a reminder to be in the moment, whether that was their intention or not. Like, it just reminds me, like, especially with the chords that they're playing and the tone of, I think he's playing a Jupiter. It's, I don't know. It just like puts me right where I need to be.
Everything in the right place. Ruston, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today. I genuinely feel like I could do a 10-part special with you and talk about every aspect of life.
Dude, I appreciate it so much, man. We just
clicked. Yeah. When I release this, I'll be tagging you in on all the social media channels and stuff. But please, if somehow you keep in touch, because I'd love when you're here to have a drink with you. And I see some of your interviews and I do a bit of research, and I don't know if I'm wrong, but the last thing I wanted to do was talk about a divorce and Casey. I just wanted to talk to you about you, and that's what matters to me.
Oh man, that means a lot to me. Well, I'll be seeing you sooner than later. Let's have that Coke, and I'll be seeing you soon, man.
So there it is. There's my interview with me and the amazing Ruston Kelly. And as I said at the start of today's interview, we talk a lot about the brand new album, The Weakness. That album is out now. Go and stream it, go and buy it, do whatever you need to do, and then hook me up on any of the social media channels and let me know what you think. I love reading the comments if you discover an album because of this podcast, or if you're already a fan of Ruston and you've listened now and you've now gone and checked out his album because you didn't even know it was out, then I've done my work well, and I absolutely love reading every comment I get, and I always make sure I reply, so please do. And all the links are on markandme.com. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, as always, please hit that share button. It's literally simple. On Twitter, just hitting that retweet button, hitting share on Facebook, or liking it on Instagram, or even put it as your story. It will bring a whole new audience to Mark and Me and cost you guys nothing. But if you're feeling a bit adventurous and you want to spend a bit of money, then I do have a Patreon account. All the money that comes in on Patreon goes right back into the podcasts, allow me to host the podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, buy equipment, and travel to do loads of interviews for you guys at home. So if you can afford just a couple of pounds a month, you get an exclusive sticker, you get a brand new badge which is exclusive just for people on Patreon, and you get access to the Lost Tapes, which are podcasts that are only for people that subscribe to my Patreon. And the good news is, next week you'll be getting a brand new episode to say thanks for supporting me. I'll be back in only a few days' time with yet another brand new episode. So until then, look after yourself, listen to Ruston Kelly, take care, and I'll see you all very soon.
Say